I'm Eddie Muller, welcoming you once again to my den of iniquity, which this week happens to be Bar 355 in Oakland, California. If you've ever felt the urge to just bust out, adopt a new identity, and take revenge on all the people who've made your life a living hell, you've come to the right place. Because, hey, that's just another routine day in Noir Alley. Although there is nothing routine about the way that story is told in today's movie, Dark Passage. This 1947 release was the third of four movies co-starring real-life husband and wife Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall, and it is, by far, the strangest. It takes a producer with lots of guts and guile to put a studio's hottest romantic duo in a picture together and then not show the leading man's face for a big chunk of screen time. That producer was Jerry Wald, who, after starting at Warner Brothers as a writer in the 1930s, worked his way up to become the most dynamic, creative, and prolific producer on the Burbank lot. Wald was riding high at this point in his career, having produced hits like The Hard Way and Objective Burma. His biggest coup was reviving Joan Crawford's career with Mildred Pierce and Humoresque, both big hits. Once a chemical fire was ignited with the casting of 19-year-old Lauren Bacall opposite 46-year-old Humphrey Bogart in To Have and Have Not and The Big Sleep, both produced and directed for Warner's by Howard Hawks, Jerry Wald was determined to produce his own picture with the newlyweds, one that would outdo Hawks both creatively and at the box office. First, he bought the rights to a novel, still in galley form, that created lots of buzz when serialized in the Saturday Evening Post in 1946. Dark Passage was the second book by a young Philadelphia writer named David Goodis, but his first crack at a crime novel. Enthusiastic reviewers touted him as heir apparent to the great Dashiell Hammett. The comparisons sparked Jerry Wald's interest, since it was Hammett's classic, The Maltese Falcon, that propelled Bogart to stardom just a few years earlier. Over the objections of penny-pinching executives, Wald paid Goodis $25 grand for the film rights to Dark Passage, a hefty sum for a fledgling novelist. Wald summoned the reclusive writer to Hollywood, setting him up with an office on the Warner Brothers lot. The producer and writer got on famously. In a rare twist, the producer actually encouraged Goodis to create more expansive, socially minded stories. The adaptation of Dark Passage was turned over to Delmer Daves, former actor turned writer whose resourcefulness earned him rare status as a writer-director at the studio. He'd recently written and directed The Very Thought of You, Destination Tokyo, and Pride of the Marines, all under Wald's guidance. While Wald wanted Daves to surpass Howard Hawks, he also hedged his bets by assigning him the same DP who'd shot To Have and Have Not and The Big Sleep, Sid Hickox. It was Daves, however, who came up with the daring solution to the plot's biggest hurdle: escaped convict Vincent Parry having his face altered by a back alley plastic surgeon. Daves proposed that Hickox shoot the first part of the story from Parry's point of view, so we never see his face. Post-surgery, removal of the bandages would finally reveal Bogart to the audience. Studio boss Jack Warner flatly rejected the idea, scoffing at the notion of paying Bogart top dollar to appear on camera for only 2/3 of the film. Frustrated, Daves complained about his predicament to his pal Robert Montgomery, who turned around and convinced the brass at MGM to let him shoot the entirety of his latest project, The Lady in the Lake, with just this kind of subjective camera technique. It's testimony to the juice Jerry Wald had at the studio that Jack Warner eventually relented. Daves got the go-ahead to shoot the film on location in his hometown of San Francisco, using the camera eye technique for the film's first act. Humphrey Bogart loved not being on the call sheet for a bunch of early scenes. The alternative was getting up at dawn for hours of makeup that would alter his face to make the plastic surgery switcheroo believable. A miserable idea, considering that he and Bacall had just gotten married. The trip to San Francisco to shoot Dark Passage was their all-expenses-paid honeymoon. The couple was ensconced atop Nob Hill at the famous Mark Hopkins Hotel, and they caused pandemonium whenever they appeared in public, whether it was to shoot scenes on the streets or party in the town's famous nightclubs. But we'll let you decide if Delmer Dave's crafty camera gimmick works. Co-starring the fabulous Agnes Moorehead in one of her more headier roles, here are Bogey and Bacall at the height of their popularity, starring in Dark Passage.